Hey guys, welcome to Crosswalk Talk. Thanks for joining me.
Thank
Yeah.
you, man.
Thanks for having us.
We are joined with all three members of Sanctus Real, the Grammy nominated Dove Award winning group. Joining us are Dustin Lally, Chris Roman, and Mark Grallman. I hope I got all that correct. You guys released an album, of course, last year. All Along was the name of that. And you have two new singles, The Difference and On the Mend, maybe some others. I may have left out a few. But you recently performed in a correctional facility. I want to talk about that first. You guys recently performed at Grafton Correctional Facility, a prison where you brought your music into a setting that many artists never experience. I wanted to talk about that. What moved you guys most about that experience? How did it shape your understanding of faith
Yeah,
and life? Anybody?
yeah. Well, that's a great question. We partnered with a group called Send Musicians to Prison, which is a really cool organization. Obviously, to have an entire organization wrapped around bringing artists that sing songs of hope, and it's not all Christian artists. They invite artists who just want to speak hope to prisoners, and they did it so well. And one of the things I loved when I first learned about it, it wasn't, you go to prisons, and I used to do this when I worked for a church. We'd go and do prison ministry, and you'd play your guitar and you'd sit in like concrete room, and prisoners would come in. And what I loved about what this organization does is they said, we're going to make this an actual concert experience. So they bring in a lot of production and they make the set look really cool. So they turn this prison area into just this really intimate setting, and they just show a lot of value to the prisoners. And every time they go into a prison, they do this. They never do a concert without being able to bring this in so it feels like a special experience. And I thought right out the right off the bat, that was such a unique way to show love to people who aren't loved very often. And that was unique. And then the second thing for me was as someone who's going to be in the mic and singing, I had a lot of conversations with myself about what to say, right? Like, how do you talk to prisoners? Because we get so used to talking to people in churches and places where we go, and people kind of believe the same thing you do, and you have your language that you speak, and they're going to respond to you. And you go to a prison, and all of that is out the window. And so a lot of thought went in, like for me, a lot of prayer and a lot of thought went into it, because you could get the guards mad at you if you talk about setting them free, right? You can get prisoners going, well, I'll never be free. So you have to be careful with your language and how you talk. And ultimately, you go in nervous and you leave blessed. That's what I experienced. You walk in there and you're nervous. It's new. They're warning you of people. They're saying, watch your back. And the guards are saying, watch your back. And then you walk away and you go, there's very few opportunities we get to talk. Scripture even talks about going to prisons and loving the least of these. And you actually go there and you see the need and you see the heart, and you see guys who are being punished for their worst day. And these guys were maximum security prisoners, and they've done something terrible, but yet you see this thing that they're living in, and they're starving for hope. And so for me, it was kind of, we throw the word life-changing at a lot, to describe things. It was invigorating. I mean, it was like, okay, God, this is the message. These are the people that we should be talking to. And so for me, it was both nerve-wracking and spiritually incredibly fulfilling all at the same time. And they embraced it. I mean, that was the other thing, is they embraced it so much. And they, at the end of it, we felt like we just had done what God had called us to do, which is honestly is one of the best feelings you can have.
Chris or Mark, do you guys have any thoughts on that concert at the correctional facility?
What Dustin was saying, I was kind of feeling, even though I knew I wouldn't be the one speaking, I felt nervous at the start of it. And, back in the day, you used to get nervous when you play shows. This is probably the first time I've been nervous in a long time. But I just found myself kind of holding my breath and not knowing how much to get into what I was doing. But by the end of it, probably just a little over halfway through, it felt like something kind of shifted. And I think Dustin had shared a few things about the songs, and it just really felt like there was a spirit of peace in the room, and there was a connection made, and it just felt like a natural uh, thing that we were doing. And invigorating is a great way to put it. I think I left there feeling like, man, I want to do this again, because
Mhm.
I feel like so often we play in churches, and you see so many of the same kind of people, same kinds of situations, but this was so unique. I felt like our songs really had um, something worthwhile saying in that environment, and it really did feel like, wow, this is why we do this. And yeah, it was really special.
Mark, you're the drummer. Did you enjoy the experience as well? How were you moved by it?
Yeah, I loved it. It was, I mean, like the guys are saying, it was definitely nerve-wracking to some degree, especially at first. But it turned into one of those things where, yeah, you don't know who really got ministered to more, them or us,
Mm.
And um, I know for me, uh, during the during the concert, I noticed, obviously the majority of the guys in the room, you don't know if they're even there because they want to be or because they were forced to, once they entered the concert or wherever, they weren't supposed to leave until it was done. So, who knows how many of them even realized it was going to be a Christian concert, but um but there were a handful of guys in there that lifted their hands when we sang a worship chorus, or
Mm.
you could just see joy in their hearts. And it's like it was amazing realizing, like, yeah, everybody is here because they made some sort of mistake somewhere along the line, but some of these guys have come to know Jesus even inside the prison walls. And just to see Jesus in there with those guys, I think was just it's just mind blowing and eye opening.
Let's talk about one of the songs that I believe you guys sang at that concert, which is "The Difference." That's your new single. Give me the story behind that. What is the story of "The Difference"?
Yeah, it's a story of, it kind of goes along with the story of the last 3 years of just trying to write songs with messages of hope. Um, we travel a lot, we see a lot of people and we felt this undercurrent where people were missing this component of belief in Jesus. The song story starts with a really cool guitar riff that Chris came up with and sent along, and we all and got to hear it. I thought, man, this is really cool. And that riff is how the song starts. And when we got together to have this conversation, we just kind of come back to this idea always of what it is, how we bring hope to our world. I've said a few times up from stage, is something that's been on my heart a lot lately, is Jesus doesn't bring us hope. He doesn't give us hope. He is our hope. We have hope because we believe in what he's already done. Now, not even really what he's doing, it's what he's done and who he is. And so as believers, it should be impossible to lose our hope because we believe in Jesus, so therefore we have hope. And so this song kind of stemmed from that idea of, it's not just like I'm such a great person because I have Jesus, and that's the difference, right? The difference is I've chosen to believe in something that is so big and so strong that it changes how I act. And so words like, if I show any love, it's only because you first loved me. It's this reaction to what we believe about Jesus. And that belief gives us a foundation of hope, and it gives us a foundation of grace, and it gives us a foundation of faith. And so everything else in our lives, every problem, every situation, every good thing is built on that foundation. So that foundation is the difference in our lives. And so we wanted people to understand that when you believe in Jesus, like, it really does make the difference in our lives, because it changes even how we act, right? It changes how we view the world. It changes how we're interacting with people around us. It changes everything. And it turned into a worship song. I mean, it wasn't intended that way. Like, we didn't sit down and say, hey, we're going to write a worship song that could possibly be used in, churches. But it was such a strong statement of faith and belief, I think, that just naturally it ran its course and kind of became this worship thing too. And so, yeah, I just wanted it to be, and I know the guy, like, we just wanted to be a statement of belief, like just a statement of faith, that the only difference between who we are and what we used to be is just our belief in Jesus and his presence in our lives.
This is for Mark or Chris or Dustin, any of you guys, but I was reading a quote from Dustin in a press release recently, and Dustin said the following. He said, "We go to churches all over the country, and it's become one of our greatest mission fields because we see so many depressed and sad people in the church. So we are in a season of writing songs about hope." I was curious if you guys sense that this sadness, this depression might be a bigger issue than it was in the past. And you guys are celebrating your 30th year next year. So you guys have been in this genre for a long time. Do you have any thoughts on that? Is this a bigger issue than it was years ago?
I have a lot of thoughts on that, but I'll let one of the other guys kind of give what they think on that too.
Who's it gonna be? You, Chris.
Go for it, Mark.
Oh gosh. You know, I think I don't know if it is a bigger issue as much as it's just rearing its ugly head maybe a little more. We're seeing it more. It's becoming harder to hide. I think, unfortunately in our country as a whole, like we've just seen so much uh division due to just the political landscape and whatnot. And then obviously it wasn't all that long ago we had that whole pandemic thing, and all the crazy tensions that came along with that. Just there's just been so much in the last decade alone uh, that is so divisive and can easily cause division in the church. And I think just all of these things has brought a lot of discouragement for a lot of believers and a lot of confusion. But at the same time, I think that there is it's those kinds of things that I believe God uses as like a purification process for his church. I think he allows us to walk through these things because it's part of how he makes us into who he wants us to be, to reflect uh, Jesus into the world. And so, you know, yeah, I think that what we're seeing really is just kind of it's a revealing of the heart of where the church is really at. And but with that, God doesn't just allow us to expose our sin to to just let it all be out there for the world to see. It's he's always offering healing and hope and forgiveness. And so we're trying to kind of, I think, with our songs and just what we're doing on and off stage, we're trying to tune into that and be a part of that, just the redeeming work that God's trying to bring his church, closer and into his heart, and just mold us more into who he created us to be to begin with, so that we can really reflect him to this world around us. Because yeah, if they don't see the hope in us as the church, then they're in a lot of trouble. They should be able to see Jesus in us. So he's continuing his good work in each of us, getting us there.
Dustin, you were had some thoughts on this issue, and you passed initially. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, we live in a culture now where everything's magnified. You mentioned in the past, well, we never had social media in the past.
Yeah.
So we never had the amount of voices and comparison, even politically. We went through a season that everyone was saying was unprecedented, but the only reason we say it's unprecedented is because of the amount of information available. We've never had tragedy or hard times with the amount of information available. So everyone's seeing this stuff in real time. And I think for Christians, a lot of times we've also built, and not to get into theological conversations, but we've also built a lot of times our belief system on the idea that God is just going to do good things for you, right? Like that's the point of Christianity. Well, if you believe that and bad things happen to you, your faith gets shaken, right? And so you have all of these issues. You have social media, you have comparison, you have belief systems that reside on, hey, my destiny is greatness and goodness. And all of those combined create, when they don't go right, they just create disbelief, right? And so I think it's worse because of the outside stuff. I think human nature is the same, right? But there's so many outside voices now and comparisons and things that people deal with that I think even people who say they believe in Jesus, I know I've had hundreds of conversations with people who believe in Jesus who will admit that they're trying to be hopeful, right? And a lot of it has to do because they're just going through hardship and then they question, does God love me? Does God care for me? And you have to ask those questions if you're believing a certain way. So I think it's worse because of that. Not because humans have changed, not because we're all like suddenly different, but I think the outside forces of our lives are way different than they were 20 years ago, right? Like,
Yeah, we have a massive overload of comparisons.
right.
We have a massive overload of sadness, because sadness is multiplied a million times because of social media and tragedy.
Yeah, exactly. We see
And
it so much.
yeah, there's not much hope on Twitter.
No,
I'll
no,
tell you
there's not.
that. I'll tell you
I,
that.
I tell my kids, turn off if we shut it all off, you wouldn't know anything was wrong with the world. Like if you didn't turn on the TV or have social
Yeah.
media, you just lived your life
Yeah.
around you.
Yeah.
You could live most of your life thinking everything was wonderful. But we're just inundated with new information constantly. I'm not sure that we were built for that. So we're
Yeah.
gonna find out. But I think that has turned this hope question on its head a lot of times where people are struggling so much more than they used to. I mean,
Amen.
ask these guys 30 years ago when you started a band, was social media even a thing? Like no, you had to create music, right? They've seen
Yeah.
so much change in just the music industry over the past 30 years. It's incredible.
I'm amazed at how peaceful my home is at night when I turn off the TV and make everybody put down their phones. I have 4 kids, and we just read a book, or we just play a game, or we just don't do anything.
Right.
The worries of the world don't enter my home those nights. Let's talk about another song, On the Mend. The song is called On the Mend. It delves into some personal healing, and it touched on a very personal story impacting Chris. Chris, it's my understanding that was inspired, I believe, by a nervous breakdown you faced. I don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah. So tell us about that.
Yeah. A few years ago, it was something I think that was building up inside of me, but I'd never dealt with anxiety or anything of that nature before. It was about 10 years ago when the band went through a massive transition, and our previous lead singer stepped out, Dustin stepped in. And I think through that whole time, our world was rocked, I guess you could say. But I would look back and say I was at peace and I wasn't really stressed out, or I didn't think I was. And I just kind of kept my head down and kept working on what I thought I should be working on. And we, survived that time. But I think there was a lot of stress that was put on me that I wasn't aware of. And it all kind of came to the surface. I guess it was, yeah, I think it was before the pandemic, actually. And we were on the road, we were at a show, and I had this crazy breakdown. The guys had to take me to the emergency room. I had this massive panic attack and the world blacked out and I thought I was gone. And, I'm getting older. I, I think I diet and I think I exercise right. I don't know what was the culmination of all the things, but for the first time in my life, I felt what other people had talked about for so long, and I had no clue what they were talking about. So, years later, we ended up in a writing room, and there was this track idea that was being played, and it just kind of hit me. The lyrics to the first part of the song, On the Mend, just kind of hit me, and I don't know why, but it kind of reminded me of that period of my life where I ended up seeing a Christian counselor. I thought there was literally something wrong with me. I felt very broken, like my headspace was off, everything was off. And I started to dig in to these therapy sessions with this Christian counselor. And after a month or two of that, I think I realized that I would be completely hopeless if it wasn't for Jesus. And there's things that I learned in that process that were helpful, and things I learned about myself that I was unaware of, that that did help me to get better. But through all of that, I can honestly say that it's really just my faith. Without my faith, I'd be lost and would be literally hopeless. And sometimes you don't think. I guess years ago I wouldn't have thought to write a song about that, but when I experienced it, it kind of felt like something that maybe this is something we can talk about now. Years ago we had a song called "I'm Not All Right," and that was something that was, I don't know if it was really controversial at the time, but it was a topic people weren't saying out loud. And this song, I love it because it talks about that process of sometimes you go through those hard times and you feel like you're spiraling out of control, but really, if you're seeking Jesus, you'll find him through it. And that's what that song's about.
And I'm sure you've had some other people come up to you maybe after a show or email you or message you and thank you for opening up about that because they've gone through something similar.
Yeah, there's definitely been some talk on our social media about it.
Yeah.
And we've been playing it live and it goes over really well. And yeah,
Good.
I think it's a cool song for us.
Let me guys ask you just a general question about life. Why do you guys do what you do? Why do you keep singing? Why do you keep writing songs? Why do you keep touring? What keeps you guys going after this band has been around for nearly 3 decades? Anybody?
Well, I mean, yeah, I think all of us maybe have different. I mean, I think there's the reality of the physical of it's what we've been blessed with the ability to do.
Yeah.
Number one, it's what we just happen to be, I think, good at. And you do, you love something, you want to do it. I think as we get older, I know that for me, it's become a lot less about, being on stage and doing the thing, doing the rock star life and all that kind of stuff. And for me, more than anything, I think at this point in my life, it's because it is not a thing to be taken lightly when you have a platform to have a message in our world, and to be able to say things that have impact on people and people will listen to. I think a lot of times people with a platform take it too lightly, it's too easy to say things without thought.
Yeah.
And I think for me, there's a season that we're in where we have things that we need to share with people about Jesus and just about life. And that's kind of, outside of the fact that you mentioned you have 4 kids, we also have a lot of kids between us, and it is our job. And I think that's virtuous to have a job and work hard and tour and do all of those things. But for us, the root of it is the message, is being able to say, God, what is it that you want us to say in this season? What are the lyrics you want us to write? I think more than anything with our music, it is our lyric. We try to be so thoughtful with our lyrics to convey and sculpt messages, and hopefully make them put them in cool music. But we want to say something with everything. So for me personally, I want to speak to the other guys. I think it's so important to be able to have a voice in today's world. I do. I think, and not to take that lightly and to put weight on things you say, because we are representing Jesus to a lot of people.
I wish every musician in the world had that belief, Dustin.
And I wish I lived it out as well as I just said it. So I'm still working on it.
Chris and Mark, any final thoughts from you guys?
Kind of what Dustin was saying there, you never know who's going to come across one of your songs. I think that's the thing that still floors me and keeps me going, is the thought and the intentionality that goes into the lyrics, the music, the way it sounds, the videos, all the things. When somebody encounters a Sanctus Real song for the first time, maybe Christian music for the first time, it is really important to all of us, I know, that what we're saying is truthful, and people will find it not just encouraging, but will find truth in it. And, hopefully it's wrapped up in a way that catches their ear. But if anything, maybe it does bring people into something that they didn't even know existed before, this world of Christian music or worship music. And that still excites me, because there's people just this last week on the road had never been to a Christian concert before and saw us on YouTube, and a song hit them, in a moment, and they decided to come to our show. And I think those are the opportunities that are really easy to take for granted because you don't often hear about them or see them, or experience them in real time. But when they do, and the person says that, it's like, wow, we're doing the Lord's work, and it's an honor. It's a privilege after almost 30 years to continue to do that, and hopefully continue to figure out from season to season what those songs are that we need to be writing and singing about.
Mark, I'll give you the final word.
I've heard the analogy used many times, but so hopefully it's not too cliche, but it's so true. I think I still view this whole thing as kind of like the story of the little boy who gave Jesus, fish and bread, and he fed all those people with it. You asked earlier what, after 30 years, what keeps us going, and I think it's because he's still using these 3-minute pop songs that we come up with, and just the effect that the stories that we hear, and how the things that get written, the lyrics that the Lord puts on these guys' hearts to write into these songs, the effect it has on people, and how profoundly it can impact them and encourage them in their walk with the Lord. As long as God keeps doing that, and as long as I'm physically able to smack those drums, we're going to keep going, So yeah, it's just that part of it never gets old.